Hello, this video is going to cover our personal statement workshop that we present for students at Wayne State University. First, a little introduction about what personal statements are. So a personal statement is often called a statement of purpose, and it's usually a type of writing that's associated with higher education where students are applying to postgraduate programs or scholarships, fellowships, study abroad, special research opportunities, and so forth. It's a short essay. Typically, it's about a page to 2 pages long, and it will cover 4 different categories in the personal statement. It will tell the reader the qualifications you have for whatever position or whatever scholarship, etc., that you are applying for. It will lay out your research interests and the goals that you have for the research that you would like to conduct at the department or in the fellowship or research opportunity that you're applying for, and why you're applying to the program specifically and what you hope to achieve. So in this workshop, our goal is to help you apply to a graduate program and write a more effective personal statement. The problem with personal statements is that they are different depending on the program that you're applying for, and they're different than the types of assignments that students and tutors are typically used to working with when it comes to tutoring. So we want to make sure that students understand that in a personal statement, it's very different from a class assignment where you have a familiar audience, typically your teacher or fellow students. You have clear instructions about what to write and a rubric typically. You often get feedback from your instructor or from peers, and there's not a lot of high stakes typically to the class assignment, whereas a personal statement, you're not exactly sure who the audience is, who is going to be reading and assessing your essay and your resume and so forth. There may not even be any instructions for this personal statement, or they might be very vague. Typically, you don't get feedback from anybody prior to submitting the personal statement to the department or college or university. And it's quite high stakes. A lot of personal statements can often make or break a student's application. So we decided to go across to the university and talk to different departments to get an idea as to what it is that they like to see or hope to see in personal statements. So we talked to liberal arts disciplines, social work and social sciences, engineering, nursing, and pre-med departments. And so all the programs we contacted are at Wayne State University, and so what's true for the departments here at Wayne State University may be different than other departments, so you want to keep that in mind. And so we just want to make sure that you also know that a lot of the information that we received is rather general, but at least does give some tips and highlights about requirements and specifications for personal statements in various different departments or universities. So we asked 2 basic questions when we talk to individuals across campus. How are personal statements used to evaluate applicants in your program? And then what do you want to see and what do you not want to see when you're reading a personal statement? And so examples of some questions that we asked specifically for your program: what is the role of a personal statement? And so relative to GPA, test scores, and others, how important is a personal statement? Do you have a checklist that you use when assessing personal statements? And what do you think students do not know about personal statements and the importance of them? So we wanted to talk about what are the top 3 areas you would like to have presented in a personal statement, and also what would you love to see, or what's something that you think is very good or positive when you're reading a strong personal statement. So we're going to talk about the audience for personal statements based on our research that we did and our interviews with individuals across Wayne State University. We're going to talk about the don'ts of a personal statement, the do's, and then some final suggestions and advice. So your audience. How does your audience use personal statements to evaluate students' applications? So there's typically faculty members who are reading your personal statement, and the number varies between 3 to 8. So they might get a quick glance over your personal statement, and so they're likely maybe not likely to read it very closely, unless the faculty member is very interested and sees that the personal statement matches potentially their own research or their department's goals or whatever it may be. It's part of a holistic evaluation. So you want to make sure that you understand a personal statement is one component of the complete application that you're submitting. So you're submitting transcripts, you're submitting your professional resume, often called a CV, you're submitting your personal statement, potentially even like test scores for like GREs or things like that. Sometimes they might even ask for a writing sample. So all of these together are going to be what they base their decision on, and essentially how they kind of define or determine who you are as an applicant. And so the relative weight of a personal statement is pretty high because it's often said that a positive, strong personal statement might help push the candidate into a top choice, even if potentially their GPA is not as strong, especially if they have strong reference letters, or it can take somebody who looks a little bit weak on paper, but then shows a lot of promise if they have a strong personal statement. So, a lot of the negatives about personal statements is that you might have all the key components, but so do a bunch of other applicants, right? And then your personal statement doesn't tell the reader much of who you are, your goals, your qualifications, anything like that. And so then that could really push you down to the bottom of the list, especially if it's poorly written, if it has typos, and so forth. Above all, for many people who read your personal statements, it's a way to get to know who you are. And so some of these quotes you can read for yourself, but we get a sense of the person and what their interests are, says one person that we interviewed. Or it helps create a narrative that puts their CV and transcripts into context and highlights kind of, those bullet pointed, statistical pieces of information, and makes that applicant more rounded out or personal. However, respondents did emphasize that academic experience and preparation is very important, and a fit with the department is also very important. And so personal details, career goals, a fit with the department, those are things that are going to push you above everyone else who may have the same GPA, the same kind of coursework, and so forth. And so the personal statement helps to do that. So it puts your application materials in context, as we said, demonstrates your writing skills, which every department did indicate is very important, and helps to see if you make a good fit between you and the faculty. So some don'ts that we don't want to see in personal statements is our next category. People who read personal statements are not interested in some detailed personal history of you. They simply want to see what led you to this path or to this area of interest for research or study. So we're definitely not looking for a personal story, no dramatic stories, no childhood stories. They don't want to see anything that's not related to the program or to the research or to the scholarship in which you're applying. So often personal can be misleading for students, and so this is why students often do a very personal kind of almost too personal statement. But what students need to realize is that this is a document that is very much connected to and linked to all the other documents that you're providing that are academic and the context of which they're being used and read. So your personal statement should be personal, but should be personally related to the discipline or the area of research. Should potentially talk about your academic journey, like we said, what got you there, in your future interests or ideas. So here, students should treat it as a professional statement, not a personal statement, is what one of our respondents said. And I think that's a really good point to remember, a professional statement where you're trying to show who you are as a professional, right? And so often one of the things that students don't do and that they should do is connect their personal statement to their academic accomplishments. So remember, it's very important to talk about your qualifications, your academic and professional experiences, and how those make you the best candidate. So connect your personal statement to your accomplishments, build an argument for why you are the best fit, explain why you will be able to give back or be some member of a department or research team in which only you can be the best fit for that position, and so forth. So, less how about you became interested in the field, says one, and more about what you've done to pursue that interest. So there's going to be a lot of personal statements that will say things like, I've always wanted to be a doctor. I've always wanted to help others. These are very vague statements, and often, what does that really mean? But if somebody says, gives a personal story about how when they were younger they were sick and they had a particular doctor who really made them feel safe and got them healthy, and therefore they went and they started to volunteer in certain types of long-term care facilities or hospitals. They made sure to explore both biology and chemistry in their undergraduate degree. They were a part of a research team that did research in labs and so on and so forth. Now you're starting to give us evidence of you're pursuing this thing that you've said you've always wanted to do, rather than just a vague statement. And so remember, being too personal can suggest unprofessionalism because, again, this should be connected to your discipline. Now, this often happens in some of the more humanities or kind of social sciences, especially social work and psychology, because they misinterpret this idea of working with others and helping others as a place where they could maybe share a story that could often be, important to them, but something that's not connected to a academic or disciplinary context, and then it can be too personal and very unprofessional. So remember, readers will be turned off if it looks like you don't know much about the program you're applying to. So we talked about that. And so you want to make sure that you talk about what kind of degree or scholarship or program you're applying to, and make sure that you know a little bit about that university, that program, people that are in that program, the work that they've done. It's even a good idea if you've worked with somebody in the past that's well known in the field to mention their name specifically, so that you really are showcasing that you have knowledge of the field beyond the scope of just, say, your classroom or just your concept of medicine in general or social work in general or whatever it may be. So in the next slides that we're going to talk about the graduate programs and kind of what type of faculty and research and department interests are assumed that you will have information about or potentially mention in your personal statement. So that's going to get down into past the personal and qualifications categories into the goals and to the fit for the department.